First, a federal judge held a hearing Thursday on whether to appoint an outside party called a special master to review evidence the FBI seized at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort last month. Now, the judge did not issue an immediate ruling and said she would issue a written order in due course. But she did order the release of a detailed list of the property seized during the search. Robert Costa has the details.
Today, Trump's lawyers clashed with Justice Department officials in court for the first time since last month's search. Trump's team argued that the review of evidence should pause so an independent lawyer or special master could be appointed and see whether the documents are privileged. Some legal experts say that move could further complicate the investigation.
If that special master is given authority to look for executive privilege, very much so, because one, that master would look at every document, and two, presumably it would mean that Trump wins some of these calls.
The federal probe has already revealed the presence of hundreds of documents marked classified in Trump's possession and prompted an unprecedented damage assessment by intelligence officials. Jay Bratt, the head of DOJ's counterintelligence division, argued against the appointment of a special master. He claimed the FBI search was legally sound. Trump is no longer the president, and because he is no longer the president, Bratt said, he did not have the right to take those documents. The former president continues to maintain that he did nothing wrong when he brought the sensitive materials to Florida last year.
Then all of a sudden you're leaving, and stuff gets packed up and sent. Right. All sorts of stuff. You know, mostly the boxes, pictures and newspapers and shirts and gear and, golf balls.
As federal judge Eileen Cannon mulls whether to appoint a special master, she has ordered the unsealing of a more detailed list of property taken from Mar-a-Lago.
You're going to be able to see what Trump had and that it was more than just keepsakes and mementos. It was serious national security material.
And Robert Costa joins me now with more. So, Robert, what arguments did former President Trump's lawyers make in favor of appointing this so-called special master?
Trump's legal team for weeks has been arguing that a special master is needed to review the evidence collected at Mar-a-Lago in early August, and they believe that there could be some documents in the boxes that were taken from the property that would fall under the purview of attorney-client privilege. The Justice Department's argument is that they've already conducted a review of the evidence for weeks. They've had a so-called filter team going through that to make sure that privileged documents, anything that could fall under that umbrella, are returned to the Trump lawyers. And this was a standoff in court about what's next.
So privilege does seem to be their big argument. Do we know anything about what potentially privileged documents were actually found during the search?
The Trump team believes that some correspondence between Trump and his lawyers might be in this trove of material. These different boxes that were taken from the White House in early 2021 by Trump, his decision to take them to Florida. Well, we don't know specifics yet about exactly what kind of, if any, attorney-client privilege material is in there, though we know the Justice Department has returned some things that could fall under that marker. As they've returned other things they've picked up in their sweep and their filter review, including passports and other matters.
It's pretty clear the Justice Department does not want this special master appointed. How could that appointment impact this ongoing criminal investigation?
There's a real concern inside DOJ that if a special master is appointed, that means a special master, an outside attorney, would have an opportunity to review evidence over a period of time. And that review of evidence could in some way delay the investigation as it tries to move forward, to interview more people, to collect more evidence, sift through it, try to understand what it all means. There's an ongoing damage assessment being done by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. What was interesting today in the courtroom is that our Nicole Skonga and others have reported here at CBS that the judge was hearing out all these arguments, and there could be a conclusion in the coming day or so where that Office of Director of National Intelligence assessment is allowed to continue, even if a special master is appointed and the review of evidence is in some way paused. But for now, shortly after 7 p.m. Eastern, here on Thursday in Washington, we're still waiting for the judge, Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, to make a final decision after she heard these arguments.
And Robert, we understand you just spoke with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who has just been asked to testify before the January 6th committee. What can you tell us about that conversation?
Well, it hasn't reached a subpoena level yet. Former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who came to power in the Republican wave of 1994, later ran for president, has since become an ally of former President Trump, was an ally to Trump when he was in the White House, is now being asked by the January 6th committee to come in, sit for an interview in mid-September with the committee. It's a sign that this committee is moving forward with its investigation, despite having so many hearings so far. In the summer, they are continuing to try to conduct interviews, bring in witnesses for depositions. And to have a high-profile person like Speaker Gingrich, a former House Speaker, very well known, to be asked to come in is a big move by Chairman Benny Thompson and Vice Chair Liz Cheney, the Republican from Wyoming. Gingrich, when I spoke to him on the phone, said he was not aware of this request at all. He said, in fact, CBS News was informing him about this letter, a 3-page letter detailing what the committee believes is Gingrich's involvement in Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Through different passages in the letter, they state that they believe Gingrich had a role to play in shepherding the message on Trump's election fight in the months of November and December of 2020, and they detail some elements of evidence that they have collected. When I asked Gingrich if he would comply with this request for an interview, he said he will follow the advice of his counsel. Again, I asked, he said he will follow the advice of his counsel. So no final decision yet on how Gingrich will respond, but he was highly critical, to say the least, of the January 6th committee, casting it as partisan, and he called it a show trial. This is an assessment by Gingrich and others around Trump about the January 6th committee that should come as a surprise to no one, as the committee has done its work and moved closer in Trump's inner circle in the past few months.
All right, Robert Costa, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you.